What is up, volleyball fans? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez. This time for real, bringing you another edition of Set Points, where I talk about all NCAA volleyball. As it is fall, I'm going to be talking about NCAA women's volleyball, but it is great to be on here, and thankfully there's no problems. I was on here a little while ago, and foolishly, I accidentally hit F4 for some reason, and my mic was muted. But now everything has been solved, everything has been fixed, so we are here for another edition of Set Points. I am so super duper excited. We have a lot to talk about today, including upsets galore to teams such as No.1 Baylor, No.2 Stanford, and No.5 Nebraska. They all were upset last week at least once. It is crazy. There were a bunch of other upsets as well. So we're going to be getting into that in a little bit. So yeah. Alright, so thank you all for bearing with me. In case you all don't know, I was actually on here a little while ago, and apparently my mic wasn't working, and I thought there was something concerning going on, and then I accidentally hit F4 for some reason. I don't know how I hit F4, but that actually disabled my mic, so that's a little bit of a dirt moment. But that was a little bit of a laughing moment for everyone. Yeah, we all need to have a good laugh. Sometimes you gotta laugh at yourself whenever you make mistakes, so yeah, that was a bit of a dirt moment on my part, so I'm sorry to everyone, but we're here live. It is great to be here. Like I said, got a lot to talk about. But first, we have some unfortunate and sad news to report. Last week, former University of Minnesota women's volleyball coach Mike Hebert passed away. It was very, very sad. Last Tuesday was his passing. It was a very, very tragic end to a great husband, a great coach, and a great man overall. And then recently we just lost a former Loyola men's volleyball player, being Dane Leclair, and he passed away due to a tragic accident this past weekend. Very sad to hear, unfortunately. And he wasn't that old. I believe he was like 22 or 23 years old, and he was a graduate assistant, and he was a graduate of Loyola and he played men's volleyball at Loyola for 4 years, and he also was a manager for the Nebraska women's volleyball team. So right now we're going to give both Mr. Leclair and Mr. Hebert a moment of silence. Mike Hebert, Dane Leclair, wherever you are now, you will never be forgotten. You have now gone with the Lord. You have gained your wings, and somewhere you are coaching or assisting or playing in a volleyball match up in the heaven with the Heavenly Father. May you two rest in peace, rest in eternal peace, to Dane Leclair and Mike Hebert. Thank you. All right, now to get into the show. Now to for real get into the show. So I'm going to talk about my weekend of volleyball. So Saturday, I actually went to Cal State Long Beach yet again to cover Cal State Long Beach and Cal State Long Beach or Long Beach State, however you want to call it. And I covered Long Beach State women's volleyball against Cal State Northridge because for those of you that don't know, I am the beat writer for the Cal State Long Beach or Long Beach State women's volleyball team. So it's pretty cool. I went over there I went over there on Saturday, and it was also trick or treat night because as Halloween is approaching, which is this Thursday, hopefully you all stay safe. And last Saturday, Long Beach State decided to have a little bit of an early Halloween as it was trick or treat night after the game. So after the game, everyone roamed around the pyramid and pretty much went trick-or-treating. I think everyone went if you had a costume, so that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, the trick-or-treating didn't happen until after the match. So the first set, Long Beach actually took the first set. It was actually a tight first set. Long Beach fell behind early, then they went ahead, and then they pretty much had set point, and then Northridge tied it up, and then Long Beach won the next 2 points, and they won the first set. The same thing actually happened in the second set, surprisingly. And, Long Beach State's up 2-0, and it looks like Long Beach is going to have somewhat of an easy night. And then Northridge decides to crash the party, and it looked like they were going to easily take the third set, but then Long Beach just manages to come back to tie it at 24-24, and then Northridge took the third set 27-25, and then they took set 4 quite convincingly, 25-19, after it was tied at 13-13. So if you're doing your math, Northridge outscored Long Beach 12-6 after it was tied 13-13. So the fifth set, Long Beach and Northridge were pretty much neck and neck. Neither team led by more than 1 point, and at the side change, Northridge was up 8-7. Long Beach went up 10-9 at 1 point, and then they eventually went up 11-9 after a hitting error from Northridge. And eventually, Long Beach started to get it going, and they pretty much scored at will. And suddenly it was 12-9 at 1 point after an ace from Nicole Hoff, I believe it was. I could be wrong, but I'm certain it was Nicole Hoff. It was one of their standout freshmen who serves the ball really well. And then it looked like Northridge was going to go down, and then they scored the next 2 points, forcing a timeout from Long Beach. But then Long Beach managed to nab the match point, and then Northridge almost stayed alive as they managed to get a kill off the block. And then Long Beach just took the match with a nice kill, and Northridge couldn't handle it, and Long Beach avoided the reverse sweep. So the moral of my story is, when it comes to that match, is don't count your chickens before they hatch, and more importantly, it's never over until it's over. Long Beach barely escaped that match. It was a nerve-wracking match for everybody, including me, who was reporting on the game. At first, it looked like I said, looked like Long Beach was going to have an easy night, and I was thinking, I'm going to make my deadline quite easily and maybe get out a little early. And then Northridge just flipped the switch, and basically they just played better volleyball. But then Long Beach managed to come up big when it matters most. And sometimes that's kind of what matters. Sometimes you don't play your best game. Sometimes you play well and then you don't play well. But then what truly matters is when you play your best when it matters most. And, in the end, that's kind of all that matters in volleyball. But overall, it was a great match. Really great match. It's a shame one team had to lose. But honestly, you can't fault both teams. Like, Northridge should be kicking themselves a little for not coming up big in those first 2 sets, because if they win either one of those sets, they could possibly sweep the match at the very least. So, gotta tip your hat to Northridge. Well, Long Beach was definitely the better team. Ari Joie, who is a middle blocker, and she's basically probably going to be playing overseas in China, probably, had 19 kills, and she's one of the better players for Long Beach State. She is a middle blocker, but she's real well known for an offense player, but she does everything well. She blocks the ball well, she serves the ball really well, she even does well on serve receive, because middle blockers aren't really known for doing well on serve receive. They're either getting the ball served toward them, or they're just trying their hardest to keep the ball in play to the point where they might have to bump it into the net, or they just accidentally hit it out of bounds, or something among the sort. But Arias Joie pretty much can do everything, does everything really well. So, and she really impressed me. She told me that she didn't really think about much during the match. And she pretty much was happy that the team at Long Beach was able to beat Northridge and sweep the season series. So yeah, definitely got to give her a round of applause. She's definitely hitting the applause button for Arias Joie. She's a senior, and she's definitely come up big for Long Beach, and this is pretty much her year to come up big. And then another player who stood out for Long Beach State was Shawna Williams. She kind of got off to a slow start to begin with, but she kept on picking it up, especially in the fifth set, where she was just getting kill after kill. And if you haven't seen Shawna Williams' kill, it's basically like a cannon. It's basically a cannon, cannon with like a thunderous boom. And if you're not ready for that, it's basically going to be an easy point. So you can only hope to dig that ball or force her to angle her shot differently, like force her to like hit an off-speed kill or a tip kill or anything like that. So yeah, definitely Shawna Williams came up big. She had 19 kills as well. Amanda Henderson also chipped in 13 kills. And there were some really amazing plays that I'm going to be posting on my Twitter account. My Twitter handle is @Teran Rodriguez 1. There are some amazing rallies won by Long Beach, and eventually there were some crazy points that you would never have thought that Long Beach would have scored. I always call them helter-skelter points that normally wouldn't be won, but were won by Long Beach State. So big ups to Long Beach. They had a lot of hustle tonight. Northridge also had some good hustle. Their coach, Jeff Stark, has coached there for 18 years. It is quite amazing. He one time had a talented Cal State Northridge team that tied for first in the Big West Conference and won a NCAA tournament game back in 2013. So Jeff Stork has definitely done his thing at Cal State Northridge. Hopefully they'll be back on top. This is one of their down years as well as Long Beach. But, it's good to see those two teams being really competitive. It's pretty cool. So, on the topic of the Big West, there's a big West game going on this week. Well, two of them, actually. On Friday, Hawaii, UC Santa Barbara plays at Hawaii, and Cal Poly plays at Hawaii on Sunday. Those are both huge matches for Hawaii, and both huge matches for Cal Poly and UCSB, because Cal Poly and Santa Barbara are both tied for first in the Big West Conference, while Hawaii is only one game back of the Big West Conference lead. So this is going to be very interesting. Most teams do struggle when it comes to playing at Stan Sheriff Center, but Hawaii hasn't necessarily been the most invincible team, considering they've had to go 5 with certain teams like UC Davis and Cal State Fullerton. They even lost to 5 to UC Irvine, so no team is necessarily guaranteed a loss in Stan Sheriff Center. But Stan Sheriff Center, that's kind of a tongue twister, is basically can be tough if you're not prepared for it. So I'm really interested to see how that'll turn out, because I think those matches could go either way. UCSB, however, has a game prior to that. The Gauchos play Long Beach State on Tuesday at the Thunderdome, which will be an interesting game. That's definitely going to be a trap game for the Gauchos, because Long Beach State is obviously not having one of their better years, but they definitely can't. But Long Beach can always give Santa Barbara a little bit of trouble, And Long Beach has some good players like Haley Harward, who digs the ball really well. Like I said, Arias Joie and Shawna Williams are definitely are definitely amongst one of the best when it comes to their hitters. But playing at the Thunderdome is going to be very tough for Long Beach to do, considering that crowd is very close to the core. So it's basically it's going to be tough for Long Beach to deal with the loud, raucous fans. And Haley Harward said it best in the press conference on Saturday. Their fans are pretty brutal. So Long Beach is definitely going to have their wits against Santa Barbara. I pretty much see Santa Barbara winning that one. I think they'll win it in 4. I think Long Beach can give Santa Barbara a battle, but I still think Santa Barbara is going to come out on top. The biggest mistake for Santa Barbara would be to look far ahead. If they look ahead to Friday's match at Hawaii, they could wind up on the wrong side of the score. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes you look a little bit of ahead to a big matchup, and then sometimes you lose the matchup that's in front of you. And that's why we call them trap games, because sometimes for those of you that don't know what the definition of a trap game is, it's basically a game against an opponent that you're supposed to win against, and then that's been scheduled ahead of an opponent that might be a bit tougher. So yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, it'll be very interesting, honestly, considering I think Long Beach is much better than their record shows, but Santa Barbara should be able to come out on top. I say Santa Barbara in 4. And Cal Poly also has a big matchup, a Big West Conference matchup against Cal State Northridge tomorrow as well. So that's kind of also another trap game. As I just said, CSUN or Northridge or however you want to call them, basically they're no pushover. If you slack off against them, you could wind up on the wrong side of the score. They have some good hitters like Nicole Navarez, to name a few, and then Taylor Oshoff is pretty good on the outside. They have some really good hitters, and they also have some good middle blockers. Northridge is basically a resilient team, and with the parity that's been going on in the Big West Conference, don't be surprised if Northridge or Long Beach State manage to push Santa Barbara and Cal Poly, because with all that's been going on with like UC Irvine upsetting Hawaii, Cal State Fullerton being so much more improved, and all of that, those teams could present problems to the top tier teams like Santa Barbara and Cal Poly. And, UC Davis is kind of up there as well, because Davis, they're a pretty solid team. Like, they have a good record, but, most of their losses have come in conference, particularly to teams like Santa Barbara, Cal Poly, and Hawaii. I think they had to go 5 with Hawaii one time at Stan Sheriff Center, and they also had to go 5 with Cal Poly. I believe it was at Cal Poly, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, oh no, it was at UC Davis. It was at Davis. Oh no, it was at Cal Poly. It was at Cal Poly. Cal Poly did have to go 5 with UC Davis, and they won that one in 5. They did sweep Davis last week, which kind of was surprising. I thought Davis was actually going to be better than that, but again, parity. Maybe Cal Poly had a better game plan intact, or maybe they were a little less overconfident against Davis, and they're being humble, because in this conference, no team is safe, and that's kind of what happened this week with all the upsets that went on. But to close the book on the Big West Conference, I will say against UCSB and Hawaii, I'm going to say UCSB wins that one in 4. I think UCSB comes up big, and they get a little bit of revenge against the Rainbow Warriors, which definitely surprised me when it came to winning at winning at Santa Barbara. But I did also hear that Santa Barbara was without Lindsey Ruddens, who is one of the top players in the nation. And, I talk about Shawna Williams of Long Beach State having a cannon for an arm. She definitely has a cannon and a half for an arm. So Lindsey Ruddens is definitely going to be all over the place tomorrow and on Friday. So, again, I will take Santa Barbara to beat Hawaii in 4 sets. As for Cal Poly and Hawaii, I think Hawaii gets that done in 5 sets. I think Cal Poly is inconsistent on the road. They're definitely good at home, that's for sure, because they have the longest home game winning streak in the nation. But at away, they're not safe. They lost in 4 to Santa Barbara, and they've also had some other tough. I've also had some other tough L's, like to Utah, like the Utah tournament. And yeah, like I said, they went 0-3 to start the season, and then they turned it around. So Cal Poly is going to need to definitely watch out, especially since they're playing in a different time zone. It's always tough to play in a different time zone. It's also very tough to win at Stan Sheriff Center, considering there's a lot of fans there. So, and you don't really expect a whole lot of your Cal Polyans to go from Cal Poly to Hawaii, which, if you do, then you're one of the dedicated ones. So you definitely deserve a round of applause for that. But I'm going to say Santa Barbara over Hawaii in 4 sets, and then Hawaii over Cal Poly in 5 sets. So those are my predictions. If I'm wrong, then I'll be eating my words, but who's to say? All right, now let's talk about the big upsets from last week. First off was number 4 Texas beating number 1 Baylor in straight sets. That was absolutely crazy, bonkers. That definitely deserves a round of applause. So yeah, I was not expecting Texas to sweep away Baylor. I mean, granted, that match was at Texas, and granted, Texas did had not lost to Baylor in quite some time, but Texas brought out the brooms and they just dominated. Baylor didn't even reach 20 points in 1 set, which is quite amazing. The set scores of that match were 25-19, 25-10, and 25-19. Like I said, Baylor didn't even crack 20 in any of those matches. Now, looking down, here are some of the match notables. Texas hit a blistering 342, and they hit 300 plus in each of their sets. The first set they hit 333, the second set they hit 316, and the third set they hit 367. Baylor, on the other hand, did not have their best hitting night. Set 1 they hit 147, set 2 they hit -80, ooh, and then set 3 they hit 139 for a grand total of a hitting percentage of .84. That's definitely not going to get the job done, and that's definitely not like a number 1 team to play like that. So, yeah, Texas just dominated that match. Another thing that Texas dominated in was the ace category. Texas had 9 aces compared to Baylor's 1. They also dominated in the block department. They had 12 blocks compared to Baylor's 4. Texas really, really dominated this match. And here are the stat leaders for Texas. Breon Butler had 12 kills. Micah White had 7 kills. And then Skylar Fields had 5 kills. Dig-wise, Micah White had 9 digs. Logan Exelton had 7 digs. Then Sidney Peterson had 6 digs. And then ace-wise, Logan Exelton had 5 aces. 5 aces alone is downright impressive. While Sidney Peterson had 2 aces, and then two other players for Texas had 1 ace. So, as for Baylor, Yasonia Presley had 18 kills, but then after that, it was so the second most kills was Hannah Lockett, who had only 4 kills, while Shelly Stafford had 3. I think the problem was in that match was that Baylor relied too much on Yasonia Presley to pretty much do the dirty work. Because, don't get me wrong, Yasonia Presley is an amazing outside hitter for Baylor. But if she's doing all the work, if she's basically having to carry that team, that's a recipe for disaster right there. No number 1 team, no matter who they are, can beat a number 4 team, especially in a rivalry game, in a huge, huge, huge conference game, in a huge Big 12 conference game. You just cannot have one player doing all the dirty work and hoping to win. It just doesn't work like that, and it just really doesn't work. And that's pretty much the statistic that stood out to me. That's what made me think no wonder Baylor lost, because you can't have one player having 18 kills. That's basically accounting for over half the kills. Like, Baylor had 32 kills, and 18 of them came from Yasonia Presley. So yeah, it's definitely a big fat no-no in regards to Baylor. You know, it'll be interesting to see what the rankings will be like. The rankings, I believe, will come out in about 8 minutes. As I'm recording this, it is 11:52 a.m. in California time, and it is a Monday, so those rankings will be coming out pretty soon, and it'll be interesting to see where Baylor ends up. You know, they could end up at number 4, Texas could end up at number 1, and maybe Pitt, who everyone seems to forget about, could be number 1. They were number 3 in last week's poll. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm very impressed with how Texas played. You know, I was very impressed with how they played, and I think that this Texas team is definitely the real deal. I think this Texas team can go far. They did go 5 with Stanford, as I've mentioned in the past. So I think Texas was way more battle-tested, considering. You look at Texas's games they've played. They played against USC, very good program. They've got some standout wins. They played against Minnesota. They swept them. Stanford, they barely lost to. That 5th set could have gone either way. They beat BYU. You know, one of their 2 losses also came against Rice. You know, against Rice, you know, they were down they fell behind 2-0. Tried to rally back, but then they just fell a little short. You know, I think that loss against Rice kind of woke them up and just said, you know what? We're not as invincible as we thought we were. So they just had to hit the ground running, put their heads down, and just keep grinding, which is definitely impressive for Texas, because now they're in first place in the Big 10 conference or Big 12 conference, and they have a leg up on Baylor when it comes to first place in that conference. So if they keep this up, they could be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. As for Baylor, they're just going to need to work hard. You know, they're going to need to work hard, not depend on Yasonia Presley all that much, because you really just can't have one player just doing all the work, because that's definitely a recipe for disaster, because 18 kills and then your second best kill leader had 4. That is basically a red flag for disaster. Maybe Baylor's has some players out with injuries. I don't know, but either way, Baylor's going to need to kick their game up a notch. Otherwise, they could wind up on the wrong side of the score going forward. So yeah. And as I'm mentioning the coaches poll, you know, the coaches poll has actually just been released. It actually was released a little while ago. And let's go down the list on who is ranked where. Like I said, there was a lot of upsets that happened last week. So let's start with 25 to 21. We're going to do this Larry B style. Again, shout out to Larry B, working hard, doing all kinds of things. You know, that man deserves the applause button right there. All right, now let's get into the top 25. Let's start this off 25 through 21. UCLA, welcome to the top 25. UCLA had 2 big wins last week. I'll get into that shortly, but UCLA is number 25. Number 24 is Missouri. 23, Western Kentucky, who now has one of the best winning percentages in the nation. Number 22 is Washington State, aka Wazoo. And then number 21 is Hawaii, staying put at 21. Now, number 20 is Cal. They dipped a little bit. They had a bit of a rough week last week. They went down from number 15 down to number 20. Number 19 is Illinois. Number 18, Rice. Number 17, Utah. And number 16 is Purdue, who had a big week last week as they pulled off a big win. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later. Now 15 through 11. 15 is Kentucky. 14, Colorado State, one of the sleeper teams. Number 13 is Florida. Number 12 is Washington, who had a bit of a tough week last week. And number 11 is BYU. Now 10 through 6. Number 10 is Marquette. Number 9 is Creighton. Number 8 is Nebraska. They had a big tough loss on Saturday. I'll be getting to that shortly. Number 7, Penn State, who barely avoided the reverse sweep against Illinois last week. I was clutch against them. They barely got out of a 2-0 jam, and that was just a crazy match. I'm just going to say their game against Illinois last Wednesday was crazy. They needed more than 25 points in order to beat Illinois in set 4. So that's pretty much all I'm going to tell you. But Penn State barely avoided the reverse, barely avoided being beaten by Illinois last week. And then number 6 is Minnesota. They're still standing strong. So now, 5 through 1. Number 5, Stanford. Stanford had a bit of a tough week. They almost lost both their games last week, but they did lose once. So Stanford's number 5. Wisconsin, number 4. They're still holding strong. They're having a really good year in the Big Ten Conference. I wish I could say the same for their football team, however, but that's for another day. Number 3 is Baylor. After sitting on top of the coaches' poll for Lord knows how many weeks, they finally slipped down to number 3. Number 2 is Pitt, as they're continuing their strong year. They only have 1 loss on the season to Penn State. And your new number 1 team is Texas. Texas is the new number 1 team as they accumulated 43 first-place votes. And like I said, they were the number 1. They knocked off number 1 Baylor last week. They didn't just sweep them, they dominated. So once again, gotta give the applause button to Texas. Alright, so let's continue with the upsets that happened from last week. Last Thursday, number 22, San Diego, fell to unranked Pepperdine at Pepperdine in straight sets. Now, this does not come to me as a surprise. As I've said before, Pepperdine is one of the more improved teams, and they definitely proved it against San Diego, and they swept them. They had such great players such as Shannon Scully and Hannah Froling, to name a few. And Pepperdine is definitely a sleeper team in that West Coast Conference. So with the loss, San Diego is now tied with BYU for first place in the West Coast Conference, and that's a crucial loss considering that if they somehow lose to BYU at San Diego, that could cost them a high seed in the NCAA tournament. And that's a bit disappointing for San Diego standards. I know they're somewhat young. I think they have 5 seniors on their team. But honestly, how do you go from beating BYU at Provo in 5 sets to losing to Pepperdine in 3 sets? Again, Pepperdine is definitely improved, but you're coming off of a big win, and I feel that might have been a trap game. I think their game against Pepperdine was kind of a trap game, considering afterward they also played Loyola Marymount, LMU, So San Diego definitely needs to work a lot harder, and they definitely need to know that the West Coast Conference has no cupcake teams. Any of those teams can knock them off. And now that they beat BYU, there was a big target on their back, and Pepperdine hit the bullseye. There's nothing. It doesn't get any more clear than that. And San Diego just needs to work harder. They need to work harder and just not underestimate anyone. It goes without saying. And then BYU continued their strong start after their loss to San Diego. They swept away LMU. They swept away Pepperdine, and they beat BYU. BYU beat LMU in 4. San Diego also beat LMU. I saw a little bit of that match. It looked like LMU was going to be the second team to pull off the upset against San Diego. But San Diego was able to turn it around after losing that first set. But this just goes to show you that no team is safe. No team is safe from an upset, and more importantly, no team is to be taken lightly, especially since some of these teams, like Pepperdine, have definitely improved. So you definitely got to give it up for Pep on that one. I can see Pepperdine making the NCAA tournament again. I think last year they did make it, and I believe they upset Arizona in 5 sets, or they pulled some sort of win out in 5 sets last year in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And it definitely helps having talented players like Shannon Scully, who transferred from Utah. But yeah, she's definitely a talented player for them. She adds a lot of leadership and a lot of depth to their team. So, because she definitely has a good swing, and she definitely does well on defense and in serve receive, and she has a killer serve as well. So having Scully definitely helps Pepperdine in a tough conference such as the West Coast Conference. But overall, I definitely can see that the second matchup between San Diego and BYU is definitely going to be a crucial one. It's going to be nuts. It's going to be bananas. It's going to be bonkers. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be a great game. But that's not until it's not going to be until another week or so, a few weeks or so. So we'll see how it goes, though. But honestly, I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup. And, in San Diego, and BYU is definitely going to be forced out of its comfort zone. Because whenever BYU and San Diego play in women's volleyball, it's basically going to be a bloodbath. It's basically going to be a lot of screaming and howling fans, and definitely a lot of noise being made. So it's definitely a fun match. But that won't be until, getting all my sources off of the West Coast Conference website, that won't be for another 2 or 3 weeks. That won't be, the BYU San Diego matchup won't be until November 15th at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So that's a little ways away, so we're not going to look that far ahead. But that's definitely going to be a crucial game for both teams. But as I said, conference play is when it matters most. And, some of these teams that want to scrap their way into the NCAA tournament definitely want to win as many games as possible. So we'll see how it goes for them. We'll see how it goes. We'll revisit the West Coast Conference a little later on the season. For right now, let's talk about yet another upset. This time, this comes from the Pac-12, where number 18 Utah beat number 9 Washington in 4 sets on Friday. So that's a huge win for Utah because, like I said, the Pac-12 is all over the place. Gotta hit the applause button right there. So yeah, Utah definitely pulled off an impressive victory over the Huskies. They definitely deserve a lot of credit for winning that game at home. And they're right in the thick of And they were coming off of a tough 5-set loss to Stanford, and you would think that you would, and they also were coming off of a tough 5-set loss to Cal as well. Yeah, most of their games went 5, and most of their Pac-12 games have gone 5 sets. So to win one that didn't go 5 is quite amazing. So definitely got to give it up for the Utes on that one. However, they were subjected to another upset. They were subjected to the upset of losing to Washington State in 5 sets on Sunday. So that was a bit of a letdown for Utah. This week, Utah plays both Arizona schools at home. I think Utah is one of the more underrated teams in the Pac-12, and they're one of the more underrated teams in the nation. They definitely are earning the respect of most teams. Having gone 5 with Stanford and almost beating Stanford, they had 2 match points, but they just couldn't convert them. They definitely have a lot of talent on their team. They definitely have a lot of talent on that team, no doubt about it. So they're not to be underestimated. And they hit and they also had a hitting percentage of .414 against Washington. So that's definitely crucial for them. Washington's just going to need to just work a lot harder, and as one of their assistant coaches told me, they just were not ready to play volleyball. They got to be ready to play volleyball every single night because the Pac-12 is a war. There's a reason why the Pac-12 is a Power 5 conference in women's volleyball. So definitely got to work on that, Washington. Washington did, however, bounce back with a 3-1 win over Colorado. Colorado, despite them being winless in the conference, they still they're still trying to look for their first conference win. They've had a good overall year as a team themselves. So, Colorado's just still trying to find answers in the Pac-12. But honestly, they're still a tough team to win at, especially playing at Colorado. So there's that. So now the same night Utah beat Washington was the same night the biggest upset of the season happened, where then unranked UCLA toppled the reigning NCAA champion Stanford and number 2 ranked Stanford at Pauley Pavilion in straight sets on Friday. That definitely deserves a round of applause. So that was definitely an impressive victory for UCLA. As I've been talking about in the past, UCLA last year missed the NCAA tournament last year, and that's for a storied program like UCLA, that hurts them. And all the fans were turning against Mike Seeley. They weren't really saying the nicest things possible. They were all hope was lost, and all hope was kind of decreasing when it came to Bruinland. And then, UCLA, who has only lost to Oregon, and I believe they lost to and Washington, they pulled this victory out, which was definitely an amazing victory, winning at Pauley Pavilion. Looking at the box score, they held Stanford to only a hitting percentage of .157. And for those of you that don't know, Stanford has a lot of good hitters on their team, such as Megan McClure, Kendall Kipp, Audrina Fitzmaurice, Madeline Gates. Funny thing is that Madeline Gates is actually a transfer from UCLA. So for her to transfer and go to Stanford, but for UCLA to come out with a victory is kind of the cherry on top when it comes to that. UCLA, on the other hand, hit .291 in that match, and that was crucial. They hit .300 in sets 2 and 3 against Stanford, and they also outdigged them 48-36. So looking at the stat, and they also held Stanford to Stanford's hitters to single digits. No Stanford player had double digits when it comes to kills. Their kill leaders, Stanford's kill leaders were Kendall Kipp and Audrina Fitzmaurice, who each had 9 kills. And then Megan McClure was right behind them with 8 kills. As for UCLA's kill leaders, Mac May. Remember that name. Mac May had 12 kills. She is arguably... I've seen her play, and she is a freaking beast. Her swing is just absolutely amazing, and if you're not ready for that ball, that's definitely going to be a point for UCLA. Emily Ryan had 11 kills, and then Lexi Hadrich had 10 kills. Dig-wise, Savvy Simo had 11 kills. Kelly Berry had 11 kills. Savvy Simo had 11 digs. Kelly Berry had 11 digs. And Mac May had 10 digs as well. So Mac May registering that double-double. She had herself a night that night. So that was very impressive. Dig-wise, however, Morgan Hentz had 12 digs. And then Kate Formico had 11 digs. And then Caitlin Keefe had 6 digs. Despite losing that game, Stanford did, however, make history when it came to that match. Morgan Heinz, their libero, managed to make history when it came to being the libero, as she registered her 2,000th career dig against UCLA. So that's definitely huge for Morgan. She's definitely come a long way as the libero for Stanford, so I definitely got to hit the applause button for her a little bit. And Morgan Hentz is the 3rd player in Stanford history to register 2,000 career digs, so that's definitely huge for her. But, however, UCLA became the first team to beat Stanford since 2015, to beat them in straight sets. So, and more importantly, Stanford did not have Catherine Plummer. I don't know, no one knows the whereabouts of why Catherine Plummer didn't play, but honestly, it's kind of concerning, actually. If Stanford doesn't have Kendall Kipp, they're going to have other players step up, But luckily they did have someone by the name of Kendall Kipp, who I boldly predicted that she would be the National Player of the Year and the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. And she definitely stepped up. So 2 nights after Stanford got swept by UCLA, Stanford almost got swept by USC yesterday, but then they managed to reverse sweep their way out of it, and they managed to beat USC in 5 sets over the Trojans at the Galen Center. So that was definitely a huge win for Stanford. They definitely needed that win, because if they didn't, then that would have been bad. They would not be in first place if it weren't for them reverse sweeping USC, and that was definitely a huge game. Looking at the box score, the one that stood out in that game was Kendall Kipp, who had 23 kills, which was definitely huge for her. I pretty much said this on Twitter. She has the potential of being the National Freshman of the Year, and despite her only being a freshman, she has the leadership of a senior, honestly, considering she knows that Catherine Plummer's not playing, and she has to step up. So she has to pretty much grow up pretty quickly as a freshman to becoming a senior. And that's definitely huge for her. If she's playing at a high rate, if she's playing one of her best games, she definitely can become a force for Stanford, who no one will want to play in the NCAA tournament. Because as you know, Stanford is a bit down this year. Especially with Catherine Plummer not playing. But honestly, it's good to have players like Madeline Gates, Audrina Fitzmaurice, Megan McClure, and especially Kendall Kipp, who's definitely stepped her game up, just being there to help Stanford out. And I think Stanford's still in good shape going forward. I think I think they definitely still have what it takes to repeat as champions. And still looking at this USC Stanford match, I'm seeing that Kendall Kipp had a blistering hitting percentage of 378, and she also had 2 block assists to go along with it as well. So that's definitely huge for Kendall. She's definitely getting better with every game she plays, and I definitely think she can become the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year and the National Freshman of the Year. Like I said, that's my bold prediction. So I definitely think she has what it takes. But, she can't do it alone. She needs everyone to help her out. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But it also helped that they had Holly Campbell chipping in with 8 kills, and Megan McClure had 9 kills, and Madeline Gates and Audrina Fitzmaurice, their seniors, had 14 and 13 kills. And even Morgan Hentz got in on the action when it came to kills, as she had 1 kill, which was probably the most improbable kill anyone's ever seen, considering she just dug the ball, and then the USC players thought it was going out, and then it hit the line, which was definitely an uh-oh moment. It's definitely something you don't want to do. When in doubt, play the ball. That's my tip to everyone. When in doubt, just play the ball. If you're thinking that it's going to go in, but in reality it might go out, just play the ball. That's the thing. You just gotta, because you're not psychic, and you're not you're not predicting the ball, or you're not having like a measuring tape where the ball is going to land, because you never know what could happen. You never know if refs can call the ball in or out, depending on where it is, or you never know what could happen. So just play the ball if you don't know where it's going to land. Just don't assume it's going to land out, and then in reality it hits the line, and then the refs call in, or the line judges call in. So, yeah. As for USC, they were led by Kyla Lanier, who had 20 kills. She did have 10 hitting errors on the day, and it looks like USC did not have Brooke Botkin, which definitely hurt them as well, considering Brooke is just she's definitely also a force for USC, but Kyla Lanier, as Larry B would put it, is a beast. But they did get some good hitting. They did get some good hitting from Kaylin Owens, who had 19 kills, and then they also had 10 kills from Jasmine Gross, who plays middle. So that's good for USC. USC finds themselves tied for 3rd place in the Pac-12, but they are behind. But when it comes to 2nd place, they are behind UCLA, Washington State, and Cal. So USC is definitely going to need to pick it up. I definitely think and I'm going to say this: USC definitely needs to work on 5-set matches, because they're 1-5 in matches that go to 5 sets, and 4 of their 5-set losses have come in the Pac-12. They lost to UCLA in 5. They lost to Stanford yesterday in 5. They lost to Utah in 5. And they lost to Washington State. And 2 out of their 4 Pac-12 5-set losses were at the hands of a reverse sweep. So if you're USC, you definitely gotta. That's definitely a moment where you just gotta say, how did we let that one go? Or as I would always say, that's basically a come on man moment. But all jokes aside, if USC wants to make the NCAA tournament, or if they want to have a deep run in the NCAA tournament, they need to play better, and they need to at least play better when it comes to a 5th set, because in the 5th set, it's basically a race to 15. Or they could just go down the route of not allowing the other team to force a 5th set. That definitely also helps as well, considering SC was up 2-0 in the match against Stanford, and they took the first 2 sets quite closely, but winning close sets like that definitely should help you when it comes to momentum. So, honestly, I don't know what USC is doing. It's a bit disappointing, if you ask me, if you're USC, but I'm certain the Trojans will figure it out. They have great players, and a pretty decent coach. USC this week goes to Washington to play the Washington schools. They play Washington on Friday and then Washington State on Sunday. Two crucial matchups right there. USC did, however, upset number 15 Cal at home, on Friday, which was definitely huge for them. Kyla Lanier had a big night for the Trojans, so hopefully the Trojans do pick it up. Last week was definitely a tough week for Cal because they lost to both USC and UCLA, but I think Cal is still having a great year. This week Cal is home against the Oregon schools, Oregon on Friday and Oregon State on Sunday. I definitely think they can still turn their season around, and they definitely can make a push for the Pac-12 conference. Because as we've now noticed, Stanford is no longer the juggernaut. They're no longer invincible, and I think it's evident that whatever's going on at Stanford, they definitely need to figure it out as soon as possible. But that's opening the door for some of these teams like Utah, Washington, Washington State, USC, UCLA, Cal. Even some of the other schools have the door open for them to somehow beat to beat Stanford. So if you're Stanford, you kind of got to figure it out as soon as possible, especially when it comes to the NCAA tournament, because if they don't win the Pac-12, they may be a pretty low seed. Like they may get seeded lowly, or they may not get seeded at all to the point where they won't be hosting an NCAA tournament game. So Stanford definitely has to step it up, especially when the Pac-12 reaches its climax. So, but big props to UCLA, man. UCLA managed to pull off a victory that big, But again, UCLA is not to be underestimated. They didn't make the NCAA tournament last year, and their goal is to definitely make the NCAA tournament this year and to shut all the haters up and all the doubters wrong, and to shut all the people that hate Mike Sealy up. Because I definitely think Mike Sealy is a great coach, and the dude brought home an NCAA championship. You want to question his authority, go ahead, but to talk like smack to him or like be mean like that shouldn't fly. You're not a true fan. And for fans that blame the coach, it is common for fans to blame the coach because they don't want to blame the players. But the coach, when it comes to coaches, they don't take credit when they win though. Like if a team wins, the coach doesn't take the credit. It's all about the players. But if a team loses, a coach gets all the blame, gets all the heat, gets all the this coach is bad or fire this coach, blah 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 blah. But you gotta respect Mike Sealy. He's a real one. He definitely deserves some applause, even though I'm a USC guy. Continuing on with our upsets from last week, we had a big upset. And it came from the Big Ten Conference. It was number 20 Purdue upsetting number 5 Nebraska, beating them for the first time since, I believe, 2013, winning in 5 sets. Definitely a huge win for the Boilermakers. Definitely got to give them a round of applause. Hit the applause button. So yeah, that was definitely a huge win for Purdue. That just goes to show you that the Big Ten Conference is a Power 5 conference in women's volleyball, and they really stepped up. After they lost the first set, it looked like they were going to lose set 2, but then they won that second set 25-23. Then they won the third set 25-17. They won the fourth set Nebraska won the fourth set 25-20, and then the fifth set Purdue just took over and won that fifth set 15-8. Looking at the box score, Purdue hit 255 in that match. They even hit a blistering 419 in set 3. And then Nebraska, they were held to a hitting percentage of 209, but they had a hitting percentage of 0 in set 5, which is kind of concerning because you would think having a player like Lexi Sun would be a lot easier because she is pretty tall. She's like 6'2", 6'3", and her wingspan is just absolutely amazing. Nebraska did have a good hitting percentage in sets 3 and 4. She hit 381 in set 4 and then 286 in set 3. Nebraska's hitting percentage did look a little iffy as they only had a hitting percentage of 75, so that's a little something of concern. But something that did jump out at me when it came to that Purdue-Nebraska match was Purdue had 16 blocks to Nebraska's 5, which was absolutely amazing. So to have 16 blocks in that match is quite amazing. 9 of those blocks actually came from Blake Moeller, a redshirt senior, who also had 11 kills and had a hitting percentage of .556. So she definitely was huge for the Boilermakers that match. As for, according to the box score, she had 12 kills, but, I'm getting mixed messages saying that she had 11 kills to 12 kills. As for the other Purdue leaders when it came to kills, Caitlin Newton had 17 kills, while Grace Cleveland had 13 kills. Dig-wise, Marissa Hornung had 26 digs, Jenna Otek had 11 digs, and then Newton had 7 digs. And then block-wise, like I said, Blake Moeller had 9 blocks, while Shavonna Catino had 6 blocks, and Cleveland had 6 blocks as well. As for the Nebraska kill leaders, Lexi Sun and Lauren Strivens both had 18 kills, and then Maddie Kubik had 12 kills. Dig-wise, Kenzie Knuckles had 18 digs, as well as Lexi Sun. So Lexi definitely plays really good side-out defense when it comes to like serve receive and when it comes to digging the ball. And also Kubik had 14 digs as well. So Kubik and Sun both registered double-doubles, which was really good for Nebraska. But block-wise, they only had 5 blocks, which was definitely a concern. I didn't think their blocking would be that low compared to Purdue's. I don't know what happened. I don't know if Purdue just had a better plan of attack for Nebraska, or Nebraska just had one of those nights where they just weren't prepared. Either way, I think, it just goes to show you how crucial the Big Ten, these Power 5 conferences are. And I definitely think that it's going to be a photo finish when it comes to that conference. So we'll see how it goes. We'll definitely see how it goes from here. I believe there are some big matchups this week in regards to that. As I'm getting my information off of the Big Ten website. So, but as I said last week, or not last week, Illinois had almost came away with an upset over Penn State at Penn State, which was definitely huge. So overall, I think that Big Ten conference is really coming into a full climax. Wisconsin is still in first place in the Big Ten, followed by Penn State, Minnesota. Nebraska is 8-2. Purdue is 6-4. Michigan 6-4. Illinois is 5-5 in the conference. Michigan State's also up there as well. And then the list goes on and on. Sorry. So for Wisconsin, it's definitely, I don't think anything's going to come easy for them, considering they're now the number 1 team, and what happened with San Diego could happen to Wisconsin, considering a big target's now on their backs, and you never know who's going to be taking aim. This week, however, will be a bit quiet for Wisconsin as they face Maryland and Indiana, but Indiana's improved, and Maryland you just can't underestimate. So overall, Wisconsin should be fine this week, but who knows? But you never know. You just don't want to underestimate anybody, and we'll have to see. So now looking at Pittsburgh's schedule for this week. They did register last week. Pittsburgh actually registered sweeps over Notre Dame and Louisville. Both were at home. So overall, those are two good wins for Pitt. They're definitely. Oh no! Those games were actually on the road. Those games were actually on the road against Louisville and Notre Dame. So to get two road victories against Louisville and Notre Dame, though, that's huge, especially in the ACC. That's definitely huge for them, and it's looking like Pitt is going to be dominating the ACC this year. And this week they do have Wake Forest and Duke, but honestly, I don't think any team can stack up to Pitt. Maybe Florida State, maybe Louisville, but but Pitt is just too good, man. They're too good. Their kill leader is Kayla Lund, who has 268 kills. I've seen her play, and she is just flat out amazing. It's amazing. Just like Kanye West's song. For those of you that still like Kanye West. In terms of aces, Stephanie Williams has 26. Kayla Lund has 24. Akio Lexus has 20 aces. Sabrina Starks leads their team with 84 blocks. In terms of digs, Haley Hillegas has 318 digs. Overall, this Pitt team is becoming more and more dangerous by the week, and they proved that they can beat some of the elite teams. They did have a little bit of a slip up against Penn State, but that game could have gone either way. That's a 5-set game, and sometimes you get a little bit of, beating Penn State one time can make you a little bit of an emotional, make your emotions go high, and then make you kind of lose control of the match. So, but we're all human. Pitt is definitely proving themselves to being one of the best, and I really think that they can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament this year. They did have to go 5 with Pepperdine, but again, Pepperdine has improved. There's no better way of saying that. I'm going to say that again and again and again and again. And they have one of the best winning percentages in the NCAA, being 955. So that's definitely good for them. So let's give them the applause button one time. All right, now, before we close things off, we're gonna talk. I'm gonna talk about one team that everyone seems to forget about, and that's Colorado State. And I'm kind of guilty for not talking about Colorado State, but this team is one of the more hotter teams. This team is number 14 in the coaches poll. Some of you are saying, "So what? Who cares?" But this team has definitely been one of the more hotter teams this season. They've pretty much torn through a lot of opponents. They haven't played the strongest competition, but they have some deep, really good wins. They've won at Boise State. They beat Colorado twice. They beat number 22 Florida State, who was 22 at the time. Their only loss was to Cal, which obviously they're one of the more improved teams as well. But this Colorado State team, nobody wants to play Colorado. Will probably want to play Colorado State in the first round in the tournament altogether. This Colorado State team is just too good, man. They're too good. It's just too easy for them. They're just chilling all by themselves in first place at 10-0. Wyoming is right behind them at 9-1. And that's who they play tomorrow. That is going to be a really good match. It will be at Colorado State, so Colorado State does get a bit of a home field advantage. But overall, I think those two teams actually went 5 the first time. But I think this one can go 5 as well. Wyoming definitely has what it takes to hang with Colorado State, and they're practically the only team that's left when it comes to knocking off that team. Because the only other team that has a decent shot at knocking off Colorado State is probably UNLV, which doesn't even play them anymore this year. And UNLV has won 8 in a row as well. So the Mountain West is definitely making a name for themselves. I don't think they're as Power 5-ish as the Pac-12 or the Big 10 or the Big 12. But, the Mountain West is definitely making a name for themselves, especially Colorado State. So I'll be interested to see how they do in regards to tomorrow's matchup against Wyoming. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. If Wyoming does beat Colorado State, I don't know if they will, but it is possible. If Wyoming does pull off that upset, that'll be huge for them because both teams will be tied for first place in the Mountain West with only a few games left. Well, not a few games left, a few weeks left. So overall, it's going to be a really, really good matchup when it comes to some of those teams. So we'll definitely see how it goes when it comes to Wyoming and Colorado State. I definitely think that they can. I definitely think Colorado State will win, but I think Wyoming will give them a battle. I'm pretty sure Wyoming will give them a battle when it comes to this matchup. And but Colorado State has some good players like Brenna Runnels, who has 271 digs on the year. And they also have Kirsty Hildier, who has 196 kills on the year, and then Paulina Hugard Jensen has 190 kills. So definitely Colorado State is making a name for themselves, and you don't want to face them in the NCAA tournament going forward. So I'm really interested to see how Colorado State will do tomorrow against Wyoming. I have nothing going on, so I could do no wrong with watching that matchup. So we'll see how it goes from there. Another matchup to watch for tonight is New Mexico State against Cal Baptist. And yes, that is the alma mater of Larry B., the head honcho for IE Sports Radio. But I'm not saying that just to have him hit the applause button from where he's at. I'm saying that because I think Cal Baptist can actually I think Cal Baptist can give New Mexico State a battle, and because they did give Grand Canyon University a battle. I think it was like last week or the week before, but they gave Cal Bap gave Grand Canyon a really good battle, and I think they could do the same for New Mexico. I will say this, however, I don't think Cal Baptist will win. I think New Mexico State will take it, but I expect Cal Baptist to grind it out against New Mexico State. And I think it'll be an epic match. I don't think New Mexico State will have too many problems, but I do expect Cal Baptist the Lancers to actually put up a fight, because I think Cal Baptist is definitely underrated in the WAC. But they just get shafted because of all the other teams. But you don't want to sleep on the Lady Lancers. I think the Lady Lancers definitely have a chance at winning that game. So we'll see how it goes, though. It is going to be on the road, though, against New Mexico State. But, you never know. You never know when it comes to these conference games. Look at UCLA and Stanford. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this episode. I wish... Well, actually, no. Before I end this off, I'm actually going to talk a little about some high school, CIF Southern Section high school girls volleyball action. So in Division I, which is basically the division that matters most, it is now down to 8 teams. Alicia Nagel versus Redondo Union, Foothill versus Sierra Canyon, Mater Dei versus Mira Costa, and Marymount versus Vista Marietta. I was really surprised to see Vista Marietta sweeping Corona Del Mar in the first round matchup. I thought the Sea Kings were better than that, or Sea Queens. They just like to go by Sea Kings because that's their true mascot. But I thought Corona Del Mar was going to be better than that. But Vista Marietta, coming from the tough Southwest League, definitely showed why they finished first in that league, in the Southwest League. I was also surprised to see Mira Costa beating Laguna Beach on Friday. But Laguna took them to 5 sets, and Laguna Beach is definitely having one of their better years. But Costa was just too much for them. And then I wasn't too surprised that Foothill beat Huntington Beach. Huntington is a good team, but Foothill was just so much better. And then I was a little surprised to see Alicia Nagel beating Long Beach Poly. I'm not saying that because I go to school at Long Beach, but I will say that I thought Long Beach Poly was going to have a better time, considering everyone was saying this is Long Beach Poly's best team since 2010. But Alicia Nagel, I guess, was able to stand their ground at home. Every team in the Division I playoffs that played in the first round won at home. But I will say this, it is good that all 12 teams from Division I go to the state playoffs, which I'm really glad they did, because some of those teams are talented, and some of those teams did get a bit of a raw deal when it came to their first round matchups. But overall, I'm glad to see that every team will be going on to the state playoffs regardless. So it's kind of like in CIF Southern Section boys basketball and girls basketball as well. And for those of you that don't know what CIF means, it's California Interscholastic Federation. It's basically California stuff. So if you're not too big on California high school girls volleyball, then you have the right to ignore this. But if you're a fan of California Interscholastic Federation Southern Section girls volleyball, then this is pretty much your thing. Or CIF Southern Section girls volleyball, then this is kind of your thing. I'm really looking forward to the quarterfinals. That's going to start on Wednesday. Alicia Nagel at Redondo Union, Foothill at Sierra Canyon, Mira Costa at Mater Dei, and Vista Marietta at Marymount. And then the semifinals are going to be really epic. I'm really looking forward to that one. Unfortunately, it's looking like I'm going to be at Long Beach State that night for Long Beach State UC Davis, meaning you'll have to hear me talking about another story. But don't worry, I'll definitely make it exciting. And hopefully I won't have any more problems with my computer. And hopefully I don't hit F4, which will disable my mic. I still think that was kind of funny, but kind of a dirt moment for me. Gotta hit the laugh button on that one. Yeah, yes. But people make mistakes. We're only human. But the man above is definitely watching down over us, definitely shedding his light on everybody. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for today. I'm going to be talking a lot more volleyball tomorrow or next week. But until then, let's cue the music, as Larry B would say. So once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, signing out. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Set Points. Thank you to all the fans for tuning in. Thank you for bearing with me. I definitely appreciate you. Without you, this show would be nothing. Without this and without your support, iSports Radio wouldn't be where it is today. Once again, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, signing out, y'all. Peace!